My dad was like my mentor and like literally gave me advice about literally everything. And then the next morning I woke up to 15 missed calls from my mom. And yeah, he had taken his life. You know, the feeling was kind of this like mixed feeling of like, oh, I should have gone home sooner. I was just like, what is life now?
To deal with the loss, what did you do to get yourself back to your center? Was it just therapy? Was it prayer? Was it working out? Like, how did you keep your spirit fit in those dark or different days?
I think ultimately is figuring out what your divine tools are. It's important to do that when you're feeling good, you know? Like the journaling and the meditating and the reading of books or watching enlightening videos and the people that you know to call on when you're, you know, that are going to give you positive energy, and really cultivating that, especially when you're feeling good, so that when you're feeling down, you know which tools to pull out of your toolbox. And what I say is if you don't do your grieving, grieving will do you.
Wow. Spiritual Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Bigger, and I'm back again with another episode. And I got the phenomenal Aleksei Archer. Hope I said her name right. She's a superstar, but more importantly, she's a podcast host of Two Girls, One Grief. She's an actress, and she's a advocate for suicide prevention, mental health, and all things to dealing with loss and grief. Aleksei, welcome to Spiritual Fitness. How are you?
Thanks, Eric. It's so good to be here. Good to see you.
Oh, yeah. So I was looking at your bio before getting on, and I was pretty intrigued by like some of the stuff you coined. I think one of your quotes was, "I'm dedicated to becoming a face and voice of suicide loss awareness in the entertainment space." But before we get into grief and loss and suicide, what was your life like before April 2017? Like, who was you as a child? How did you grow up? What was life like?
I was born and raised in Manhattan in New York City to two immigrant parents. My mother was born in Trinidad. My father was born in Northern Ireland, though he grew up partially in England. And then I moved to LA. I always knew that I wanted to be an actress, and I'm more of a daytime person than a nighttime person. I feel very blessed. I went to private school in New York City, and that was a really fun and amazing experience. But yeah, we really grew up at a time when you could just go and take I hear the kids these days don't take the subways by themselves, but we were definitely taking the subways alone.
Y'all was living life out loud on y'all terms. So basically you're saying growing up, you know, your parents were immigrants that came to the States. They excelled, and you had a pretty decent upbringing. And your mom and dad were married together most of their life, or?
My parents met and fell in love. My older brother was 5 at the time, and my mother had him from a previous relationship.
Yeah.
And so my father, a white man, basically adopted my older brother and raised him as his own. And then a few years later, they had me. I have a younger brother also by the same parents. And so we lived in an apartment on the Upper West Side, which is still the family home. It's been there forever. And yeah, like I feel like even at that time, being an interracial couple was very edgy and very different. But they really cared for each other. They had a very beautiful relationship.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I always tell people your blueprint of your upbringing gives you insight into what you believe, think, or what really is your perspective on love, relating, relationships, and just life in general. Like, you know, you went to private school, you grew up in Manhattan, your mom and dad were in love, you had two siblings, two brothers, you know, and life was what it was, and you lived your life. Now, growing up, who did you have a closer relationship with, your mom or your dad?
I was always closer to my dad. I was like your archetypal daddy's girl. I was dad all day. And yeah, like he was my best friend.
Yeah, and I think you know, as I evolve and continue to become into who I am, I didn't know how important, for one, a man's presence is in a woman's life. Two, not only that, a dad. And you know, I know several women who didn't really have that in their life, the way they could have, or didn't experience that, so they don't have that perspective. But far as your safety growing up as a young girl and a young lady going into high school, having your dad, how did you feel about life? What did that do for your confidence? How did you feel about your acting career and just being yourself? Like, did that amplify your experience? Did you have more just faith in everything you were doing because of the presence of your dad?
Absolutely. But without a shadow of a doubt, my dad was always my biggest cheerleader. He really supported me in being an artist.
Mhm.
I went to liberal arts school, so I was exposed to a lot of art. And so I was singing. I studied at the Manhattan School of Music from when I was 12. So I was training to be an opera singer. And he came to all of my concerts. He was always sitting front row. And yeah, I couldn't even really imagine life without having had such a ride or die dad.
I love that because I see that with my siblings. With my sisters, I have three sisters, and just all the women in my life, my clients, just people I meet, how important it is to hold space for women, to feel a place of safety, to be someone they look forward to or look up to in place of need or whatever it could be.
One of the things that like I just always think of when I think of him is he read me bedtime stories like every single day.
Wow.
Yeah. So we got to spend quality time together and I also got an education. So
And
great.
it's beautiful to have that because that's why you're probably so good at speaking on camera, acting, being a podcast host, an advocate for whatever you choose. Now, in your journey, what was like your most challenging time in LA?
Well, since the pandemic and the writer's strike,
Okay.
it's just really changed the energy of like the whole town. Like things are just not as busy. People aren't like moving about. Like there's not as many like productions. Usually you couldn't like, drive, you go on a single ride without seeing something that was like in production here. So I think the general energy for artists from behind the camera to in front of the camera, it's really shifted a lot here. And it's such a different place now than maybe it's that way everywhere, but it's such a different place now than it was before. That being said, I am working still and have worked despite the pandemic.
Yeah.
Uh, and so to compare that time to like before I really sort of got my start would be hard to do because that was so long ago. But in terms of like being on the ride, like being on the train, being a working actress with a resume and things kind of being this like weird environment, I would definitely have to say like in the last 5 years.
It's so important for us to know who we are in these moments because I do believe, to your agreement, that since the pandemic, LA is different. And on top of this year, we had the fires. So I feel like we're going through a death and rebirth, and it's going through a spiritual awakening, and you can feel the heaviness or the gray cloud. Now, talking about Two Girls, One Grief, talking about April 2017, because I did say that prior. I want to get a little bit into that story. Let me know if you can or you can't, because, I want to know the month prior to April 2017. Can you kind of take us down what your life was like? What were you actually doing? What show were you on? Were you dating? Were you in love? Like, what's the serendipity? Like, what was happening in your life of all? Like, what was your relationship like with your parents? What was happening?
Yeah. So at the beginning of 2017, I was doing this show called CBS Diversity Showcase, which is like the premier sketch comedy showcase in the country.
Mhm.
They get the best of the best sketch comedians around the country, and they have us live in a basement at CBS.
Wow.
And we put up 1,500 sketches that were all written by this team of writers and the sketch comedians. And out of that 1,500 performances, we get whittled down to 20 shows. And so it was really exciting. I had tested the previous year for Mad TV, and then there was complications with the Mad TV show, so I was referred to CBS. And when I went to CBS, I was a little like, this kind of feels like a step backwards, but it actually ended up being
Yeah.
a really great opportunity. I made some of the closest friends that I still have to this day. And being in the showcase really put me on the map because all of the other networks come to the show, management teams, agents, all of that stuff. And so that show went up in January. In March, I got the biggest sitcom that I had ever gotten on a show called The Great Indoors, starring Joel McHale.
Wow.
And I played Chris Mintz-Plase's nerdy girlfriend. He's McLovin from Superbad. And so we had like the most amazing chemistry. We were this really nerdy couple that was, he was my on-camera boyfriend. So yes, I was in love at that. And we were told that they wanted me to stay on for season 2 and for it to not just be the B story, but for it to be the A story. And so here we are in March. At the beginning of April, my dad had an accident and he was brought to the hospital and he was being kind of like silly about it. My dad was a very like English humor, kind of stiff upper lip, tough guy, but like silly.
Yeah.
And he was like, kind of like, yeah, I had this accident. I'm always getting into accidents and didn't really want to get into like the details of like what the accident was. And I was just like, all right, like, fine. You don't want to like talk about it.
Yeah.
It wasn't like atypical of him to not do something like that. You know what I mean? So he says that it ends up coming out that he was attacked. My cousin, who's about to have her second child, is like fully pregnant and she wants me to be her comedic doula. When she had her first baby, I was there too. And so I'd go when she's like in labor and I'd tell her jokes because I mean, that's what you want when you're giving birth to a baby, right? Is me telling you jokes. So I call my dad and I'm like, hey, I know you've had this accident. I really want to see you. I miss you. I want to come to New York in 5 weeks so I can see you and I can be there with Nika when she's like going to have the baby. And he's like, perfect. And he's like on the computer and he's like typing super fast. And like within like 5 seconds, he had like booked the ticket. And I was like, cool. All right. And he was like, all right. And he kind of like rushed me off the phone, which also wasn't that odd.
Yeah.
So 2 weeks later, I talked to him. I had been having a disagreement with a girlfriend. My dad was like my mentor and like literally gave me advice about literally everything, even a little debacle that I was having with a girlfriend. He was like, she was helping me with managing my books. And he's like, it's really hard to find those kind of people. So you should just keep her on. And he told me that he loved me. And then the next morning I woke up to 15 missed calls from my mom. And yeah, he had taken his life.
So in that moment, were you, of course you were shocked, but what was the feeling in your body? That, is this real? What was happening within yourself?
It was weird. And I think that, and I've heard this a lot from other suicide loss survivors of feeling like there was a little part of you that maybe thought that maybe that was a thing. Mm-hmm. And then kind of like when you see that many missed calls and you instantly know something bad has happened. But I was right here in this exact room and I ran back and forth like 15 times saying no, 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 no. And,
yeah,
the feeling was kind of this like mixed feeling of like, oh, I should have gone home sooner. What could I have done? Uh-huh. Where do I go? What am I doing right this second? And then in my case, it was like constant movement. I booked a flight. I got to New York that day. Like I was just like on the move. Yeah. Probably like the next couple of months, to be honest with you. It didn't really sort of stop. Like it was just one thing after another thing after another thing. And I got home to New York that night. My mom, I mean, she was just beside herself, and still is at times. And I laid with her in their bed and like laid in my dad's spot in the bed and I could smell him on the pillow. And I was just like, what is life now?
Yeah.
And it's been a constant discovery since then. Things will never be the same as they were. And, I know we'll get into more of this, but I have fought rigorously to try to find the gift in this.
Yeah.
And share that with other people.
Your dad is your dad and we can't return him. But I do know as we speak, he's present, right? And when you were talking about him earlier, before we got into the details of this, you smiled and I felt his energy as if he's in this interview. Like you say, he came to all your dance recitals. He's here. I do know that. And so you can still have that connection, even though you don't have that physical relation of him being present. But I want to talk about how you took your pain and you turned it into power, and how you created the Mourning Glory and you two girls one grief. Before we get into that, what was your process to deal with the loss in those days or in those months or in those weeks? And you probably still in your process, but what did you do to get yourself back to your center? Was it just therapy? Was it prayer? Was it working out? Like, how did you keep your spirit fit in those dark or different days? What was your actions or what did you do?
Well, in the very beginning, it was very like I was just trying to figure out, like paperwork
Mm,
and like trying to keep it all together because I felt like I needed to like hold space for my mom and I needed to like, I was really kind of like very like buttoned up and just trying to like tick things off of a list.
yeah.
And I didn't have any process. I wasn't in any process for quite some time. I fell into what I like to refer to as unhealthy healing modalities, which I feel like are in some ways as relevant as the healthy ones sometimes because people just don't have an awareness that they are doing things. Like I was like partying and clubbing, like just like get out of the house. I was like clubbing my dog because I didn't have anybody to really take care of her. And I was like in the city and I was really, I felt this need to want to get like held and cuddled. But like I didn't know that that's what it was. And I feel like having self-awareness is so important, especially when we're going through these like deeply internal grieving moments. So I kind of just stumbled along for quite some time. And then I felt like I was kind of running out of safe spaces. And I also realized that some of the safe spaces, some of the people that I thought that I could have gone to get support for this, like either they started to get exhausted or they weren't necessarily the right places for me to go.
Right.
And understanding and knowing who is right for what is important. And sometimes discovering and creating new spaces is totally valid. So, interestingly enough, that we met at a Dee Dee Hirsch event 2.5 years after my dad's suicide. I'm driving down Olympic Boulevard and I see their location over on Olympic that says Suicide Prevention Center in huge letters. And I had never seen that building before. And I was like, I'm gonna call them.
Yeah.
So I did. And they connected me with the bereavement sector. I didn't even know that I was bereaved,
Mm.
but
Yeah. What does that mean?
bereaved means you're grieving. Like
Oh, okay. Okay.
you are a bereaved person. And this is silly, but they were so helpful I couldn't believe it. So I was put in contact with Rick Mogul, who runs it there, and they did a diagnostic on me, and they said, "Well, you can join our group that meets on a weekly basis." And they gave me a list of therapists, and so I started seeing this therapist who was doing EMDR and talk therapy with me, and really starting to uncover some of the things that I was like holding on to, like that, I could have done more. And if I had just gone there and like looked in his eyes, then maybe I would have known and been able to prevent it. And it's pretty archetypal to want to play God in those types of situations. But it was also something that I absolutely needed to let go of. And so that's when that process sort of started. And then I will never forget my first group meeting. I brought a blankie and took my shoes off. And I got really cozy because those rooms can be a little bit cold.
Yeah.
And sat around hearing suicide loss survivors tell their authentic stories. And I know that for like my first bunch of groups, I just like totally just sat there and cried because hearing other people say they've been going through this experience and seeing what an epidemic it was just like a total shell shock, But in that very first group meeting, I met Audra Malash, who lost her mother to suicide the same year I lost my dad.
Mm.
And she spoke so eloquently about her mother, Debbie's passing. And I was just like, oh my God, number one, who is this girl? Number two, how did she get to be so good at talking about this?
Yeah.
Like, I've always, thought of myself as being someone who could speak eloquently about anything, but like, I literally knew nothing. So I went up to her after the group and I asked her if she wanted to be my friend. And she told me about another group that she was a part of called Solace that was here in Venice. And then I joined the 8-week program at DD Hirsch. So I was going to 3 groups and therapy.
Oh, so you was doing the work.
All of it. All of it.
Hey, we gotta give your shouts out to the dad because he made sure you stayed in class to be the best entertainer and actress and everything you are today. But I just want to stop there because I think I can't say it's easy to do the work in those spaces, but you've done the work. And I want to acknowledge that and give your flowers around that because it helped you help others in the speaking this point. And I wanted to ask you because I want you to continue this story. But recently, I shared 2 stories, and it's devastating. I had someone that I used to work with 10 years ago when I first moved to LA. He got into a situation where he was dating someone who was 10 years old. I believe he fell in love and heart was broken or whatever. The girl got a restraining order on him, whatever. And so something was going on emotionally. Make a long story short, this past weekend, I found out that he fouled her. Did what he did and did the same thing to himself, and he's no longer with us, right? So I want to, right? So that's the type of energy that comes through in life. And then on top of that, I know somebody recently who just, they're on medication. And the thoughts that come through their mind and the things they feel. I also dated someone years ago who was medicated as well, right? And they told me that it made it worse in their mind about them wanting to be here on earth. And I think enough people don't talk about it because of the stigma, because of the fear. And I don't want to hush up about something that's so real in our life and we just keep it under the rug because people out here suffering in silence where we have information that can turn into awareness, that can become wisdom, that can help someone else. But I feel that quote you said, I'm dedicated to becoming the face and voice of suicide loss awareness in the industry. I feel like you have the power, the potency, the confidence, the competence, and the bandwidth and the experience to speak not only on it, but speak to those who might not be feeling safe in their mind, who not I be feeling safe in their body. And a lot of times it might not just be them. It could be the medication. It could be the things that's going on in the world. It can be ancestry. It could be so many things. So I don't want to put that heaviness on others. But to your knowledge, what would you say if anybody right now is listening and they might even have the thoughts or they've been thinking about it or they know someone, what advice or what could you say? Because you did the work, you did the 8-week program, and now you're here speaking about your experiences. But I feel like your voice is powerful, and I do think your soul could give some type of energy to that space for people who might not be feeling the greatest.
To anybody who is struggling, just remember that you are loved. You are so loved. And, the shame around having suicidal ideation, I wholeheartedly disagree with it because listen, suicidal ideation is normal.
Say that.
Suicidal ideation is normal. In fact, it's a lot less people that have never had it before than most people. So I say that to say, not because like I'm encouraging it, it's just what it is. And that like, you don't have to feel shame about having those thoughts. What I do want for somebody who is, thinking dark thoughts and I'm taking this from Kevin Hines. He said this on my podcast that's coming out on Thursday. He says, say these 4 words: I need help now, to the closest person that will listen to you.
There it is.
Because shame creates fear. Fear can create silence, and silence can be deadly.
Yeah.
So don't be silent.
Don't be silent. I need help now. See, that's a tagline. That's so true.
Yeah.
Because there's so many things that's happening in our world, and if people are carrying things that we don't even know. even the people that's on stage, like I was like me and you, like how we're visible doesn't mean you don't carry the shame or the guilt. The pain.
I want to tell people like who are feeling shameful. Let me tell you guys, and I forgot this part of the story. The 2 weekends. This is a reason why I didn't go home right away. Because 2 weekends before my dad took his life, I was at Coachella,
Mm.
and the weekend after that, I was in Las Vegas, having a great time, partying with my friends. And like, if anybody could feel a ton of shame and embarrassment about not showing up for her parent that was in a mysterious accident, it could have been me. No, 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 no. We're not. We're not.
Living it. Yeah.
No, because you only know what you know in that moment. I didn't know enough. And of course, I could look back on that time and be like, oh, what was I doing? I could have saved. I could have a million things. So I say that to say, and I've done lots of other shameful things too, but like forgive yourself.
Uh-huh.
Forgive yourself. Please. For the love of God, forgive yourself.
Forgive yourself. And forgiveness is so true and powerful. So you was telling prior to this process that we were going down that you met the host of your podcast, Two Girls, One Grief. And you guys connected and she spoke so well about her loss and you guys became friends. You started to do the work and to empower yourself to get back to where you need to be. What was the initiation of the podcast to like, this is what we should do and it's time? Like, how did y'all get into that space?
So that was 6 years ago. Yes. So it's been like in the making for, forever. So after I was in a bunch of different groups, I had, and I had this sort of like hit, like, oh my God, we need a face and voice of suicide loss, because what I was finding in those group meetings was that there was so much shame and stigma we really like to call more like prejudice against like mental disease. And also like for suicide loss survivors, like, oh, if you tell somebody that like your parent killed themselves, like, what are they going to think about you? Or if, if your kid does, or if your partner, like there's, a lot of like kind of weird blame and weird things that people say that I don't even know if they mean that, but
Yeah.
they're just not educated. And so you have to have like this incredible armor to be a suicide loss survivor and to be able to like speak publicly about it. And I thought I was the person for the job. I need to educate myself about this conversation so that like I can speak about it eloquently, like my friend Audra. And I also felt like, oh my God, we need to make a documentary about the benefits of group therapy for suicide loss survivors, because they're going to find how amazing it is.
Yeah.
So I got all of my favorite survivors together, everybody who was willing to go on camera. And I hosted a birthday party for my dad in 2020 of January. And I put together all of these like community games, and I just saw everybody like really come together in a new way. And I was like, all right, like this is it. Like this is the show. So I put together a made for TV group. I got a mental health professional, Andrew Landy, who's still my right hand. We still, and we were co-facilitating these group meetings together and filming them. And then COVID lockdown happened. And I was like, ooh, I was like, well, we have this like made for TV group. And then I realized, oh my God, like they're real people in a real group. And now what? So we transferred over to Zoom and it's been going ever since. So
Congratulations.
thanks. I know. It's like, it's wild. And it's like amazing. Now Dr. Marlon Rollins, who's now, yeah, the three of us facilitate a group together. Has to be the best group for suicide loss survivors in the world. I mean, we've got amazing professionals, we've got advanced grievers, and a really amazingly kind of loose environment where people really feel like they can be their authentic selves. So fast forward to, I think it was probably like last summer or something like that. Audra and I, we both live in Venice. We both like to party. We were going out to like bars and stuff, and people would always ask us, "Oh my God, how did you guys meet?" And then Audra always give me an awkward look, like, "Oh God, what's Aleksei gonna say?" Find these really like interesting and kind of fun ways to like share the information and like create an environment where we tell them that our parents killed themselves. I mean, one of the things that silly things that we ended up coming up with was that our parents introduced us. And then that would lead us into these other conversations. And then people would always end up telling us about a loss that they've had. And then it would always be like a deep, amazing conversation, like way above your average, like bar conversation. And we were like, we might have like a little bit of a show here. Like we should do a podcast. So fast forward to this summer, I had a dinner with somebody who had a membership with a podcast studio. And he was like, I have all of these free hours that I'm not using. I'm not a podcaster. Would you like to use? And I was like, yep. Yeah.
Let's do it. I feel like you were chosen. Unfortunately, there was loss involved, but there's going to be a purpose served and more people heal and people can reveal what they're really feeling. I think sometimes when we get so caught up in the shadow version of pain, right? Which is, I would like always say the ego is just, because in some countries when people pass away, we're going to get into this, they don't mourn, right? They glorify someone leaving Earth, right? Because they know they're in a better space. Now, the context to it is different, but I think what you're doing is you're celebrating and shining light on darkness that people try to keep dark. So people don't never talk about it. I love that you're doing that. I love what you guys are doing on the podcast. And I'm just happy to know that there's someone out here that's willing to be the voice in the face. And you've taken action. You've been doing it for 6 years and you've been doing the work. So you're a leader in a space that other women can come up to, or people in general, to talk about their story and not be judged because of the space you hold. So congratulations on that. But last but not least, can you give more, talk about your Mourning Glory? What is that all about? I like that name. I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Thanks. Yeah. So it's Mourning Glory Club, spelled Mourn. It was my inspiration was the morning glory flower, which grows all over my town of Venice Beach.
Yeah.
And a lot of the species of morning glory flowers cheerfully blossom in the morning and die in one day, representing the unrequited love of the person we've lost too soon. Whereas the foliage and the vines take over entire buildings,
Oh.
representing the community left behind to rebuild and grow together. So I loved, I kind of put the pieces together. I was like, oh, this is the perfect symbolism for my charity. And so we do group therapy. Like I said, Dr. Marlon and Andrew Landy, who are both mental health professionals, are alongside me. We're also doing one-on-one coaching and really taking all of the information. Dr. Marlon is also a suicide loss survivor as well. And our special connection is his sister, Amber Rose, who died by suicide. She and I look very similar and act very similar to each other. So it's like he has a little sister again. And so we've been working together also. And, I have found that being able to be with suicide loss survivors who have done the work, because it's so specific, this type of grief.
Yeah.
You could stumble along for many, many years, and a lot of therapists will probably try to lead you down that pathway, but there's something to be said about lived experience. I just am having somebody who's graduating from their 6-month program, and he told me over the weekend at another walk that we went to the AFSP one, he's like, in the 5 years that I did therapy, I learned more from you in 6 months. And I was like,
see what I'm saying? I need help now. Come to your page. Come to your podcast.
yes.
And nice thing.
That's what suicide prevention needs. We need to make it so that people want to talk about it. People want to watch about it. And that's what's happening. And it's so exciting to see the world changing, us changing the conversation, the world responding to it positively.
It's beautiful. You're bringing light to darkness. I think on your website, you have sad girls, happy endings.
And what's really exciting too, because they say technically like more women go towards like grieving and groups and stuff like that than men do. But I actually have more men in the Mourning Glory group than I do women.
Yeah.
I think part of that might be because like there's a part of me that would have want my father to want to live. And so being able to like give that back to my community is maybe some sort of like also healing for me. But for our followers and our fans and our viewers, we are 50 on Two Girls One Grief. We are 50-50 male to female. So
oh, that's amazing. Yeah.
it's really exciting to see the boys jumping on too. And
We need it. As I told you about that incident, like I feel like in a collective, a lot of men are struggling emotionally. They don't know what to do with their emotions. And so they're pouring it out in the world in unhealthy ways that's causing chaos and devastation in some places, unfortunately. So that's why I want to continue to be who I am, to allow men to feel safe to be however they are so they can get some healing, some help, and we can come together and change the world in a positive way. And so when you have a purpose, I feel like you're chosen. And when you're chosen, you have no choice. And I feel like it's always been our choice to be on stage for the greater good of the world, not just ourselves. So thank you for your time today. By the way, where can we find you? How can people get into your world, into your vortex?
they can follow me at Aleksei Archer. It's Aleksei Archer. I'm actually super easy to find. I'm most active on Instagram, but I'm also on TikTok and probably other places too that I'm not LinkedIn.
Well,
And Mourning Glory Club, spelled MOURN. It's mourningglory.com. We do, Dr. Marlin and I have a monthly that we're starting next month, a monthly webinar where we'll be giving amazing information around grief and suicide loss. So please tune in for that. And you can RSVP to our website at mourningglory.com. And there's Two Girls, One Grief. It's spelled with the two and the one, the numbers. Yeah. And so there's twogirlsonegrief.com. Two Girls, One Grief on Instagram, and of course on YouTube, where our full episodes are.
I got two questions. So the first one is, what is spiritual fitness to you? And what is one thing you want to leave with everybody today as we move forward?
Spiritual fitness, I think, ultimately is figuring out what your divine tools are, putting tools in your toolbox and being able to call on them. And I think putting those tools in your toolbox, it's important to do that when you're feeling good, like the journaling and the meditating and the reading of books or watching enlightening videos and the people that to call on when you're, that are going to give you positive energy, and really cultivating that, especially when you're feeling good, so that when you're feeling down, you know which tools to pull out of your toolbox. And what I say is, if you don't do your grieving, grieving will do you.
Wow. Well, thank you once again, Alexia. You're amazing. So thank you for taking the time, the energy, and the commitment to, speak your truth, be vulnerable, be open, be honest, be authentic. And I think everyone listening will take something from this. And I took a lot from this. Thank you. Honestly, being the first person that I've had on my podcast to talk about loss in this way. So you allowed me to feel safe and comfortable asking you questions about it. And, Spiritual Fitness Podcast, people follow her. I'll put everything in the show notes. And it's miracle season. You are a miracle in every season because of everything you've been through and everything you're growing through. And I just pray that you continue to do the work. You continue to save lives, help lives, and you and your host, Two Girls, One Grief. That's powerful. So it is. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Subscribe to the Spiritual Fitness Podcast. Go to YouTube, share, subscribe, like, go to Instagram at Eric Bigger. And we're out. Peace and love.